And it's a little bit easier to find leverage within this type of framework than I believe it is in a funnel strategy, or when you think of it as a funnel. Welcome to From the Ground Up. I'm Zach Conway here with Kelsey McKenna. Oh, wait, I'm not Zach Conway. I am Kelsey McKenna, and I'm here with Kelly Forst, not Zach Conway. Kelly is our new director of marketing. This is her hard launch with Seeds. Officially, you're a new hire, Kelly. How do you feel that I have brought you on this podcast without Zach? You're basically co-hosting within your first 2 weeks or 3 weeks of working here full time.
I am so excited. Yes, we are in week 3, so We're officially moving things on. Super pumped to be here and talking about this topic today.
Yeah, so Zach bailed on this discussion because I think he knows how passionate we both are about this. And before we get into it, though, I want you to just share maybe a little bit about who you are, since we just are randomly throwing you in here and we have a totally different format today. So maybe just brief background and what you're doing here at Seeds.
Sure. Who is this stranger just all of a sudden popping up out on the blue on the podcast? Happy to. Yes, my name is Kelly Forst. As Kelsey said, I am the new director of marketing at Seeds. I've been with the team about 3 weeks now, but we've been working together for a while. So I love the Seeds platform, and all the customers that I've come in touch with so far have been fantastic. I have been working in the marketing for financial services sphere since the beginning of my career 12 years ago. I started at a top 10 PR firm for financial services where I had the opportunity to work with all kinds of different firms across the financial services spectrum. But I've always had a soft spot for wealth management. I just feel like working with financial advisors and seeing the impact that they make on their clients' lives is really rewarding. So I'm so happy to be here at Seeds and creating something truly innovative that they can use with their clients to create a fantastic investing experience.
Yes, and we are so excited to have you. And I think I am the most excited because as we've been working together over the last few months, when you were not full-time, you've been kind of doing consulting and contracting with us. Mm-hmm. We have gotten pretty in the weeds on some of our opinions about, advisor growth strategies and startup growth strategies and all the things. So with your background in marketing, we just thought this would be a great opportunity to come on and actually talk about things that we're really talking about and that we talk about every day together, and especially, every day now that you're forced to talk to me every day as a full-time employee. So for everyone listening, one of the things that we wanted to bring to the podcast today that we've been having a lot of conversations about recently is kind of a funnel marketing strategy versus a flywheel marketing strategy. And these aren't even really marketing strategies, but I do think they get bucketed into marketing in terms of the type of content that's created around these, because funnel, I think, has always been traditionally a marketing sales term. But these are really more growth strategies is how I would position it. And we've been talking about this a lot internally. And I spend a ton of time with advisors talking about their growth strategies. And we were just talking the other day about how this would be a great opportunity to share kind of what is the difference between those two types of growth strategies. And then what are different tactics that could be used in a flywheel growth strategy versus more the traditional funnel that most folks are used to talking about and hearing about. So this is not a brand new concept. We didn't come up with this concept of a flywheel, but I do think it applies really well to a wealth management firm and how they work with their clients and how they aim to grow. It's a little bit more experience-led, and it's a little bit easier to find leverage within this type of framework than I believe it is in a funnel strategy, or when you think of it as a funnel. So super wordy. You're the marketer. Why don't you talk about funnel versus flywheel just to kind of define the two?
Yeah, for sure. And I think just to back up a step, I think this is the perfect time and place to be talking about this now because, I've listened to almost every episode of From the Ground Up at this point. And what I love so much about the show is you and Zach are so honest and open with advisors and relaying and paralleling the experiences that we have growing Seeds with the experiences that advisors have growing their businesses. As I'm kind of stepping in and creating some marketing strategies for Q1 and beyond, it just seems to make sense that we kind of share what we're thinking here and relate it to how advisors can apply it to their business. So with that, let's go into funnel versus flywheel. I think a lot of people are very aware of what the marketing funnel is. If you think about a traffic cone and you flip it upside down, that is what the funnel looks like. Typically, it's broken into 3 main phases. So if you think about the top of the funnel, it's about bringing in leads to your marketable universe at the top. So they're just becoming aware of your brand for the first time. That's what we mean when we say top of funnel. Awareness is really that first stage of the funnel. Then as you move down the funnel, it becomes smaller, becomes tapered out because generally your marketable universe becomes smaller. And that's where you want to really engage and nurture the leads who are now in your universe, who are aware of your brand, but maybe don't know your full story, don't know how you can work with them, how you can support them, solve their pain points. And then all the way at the bottom of the funnel is the smallest bit of the funnel, and that's conversion. That's where you're converting these leads to become customers or clients, but that's where it stops. That's the full visual of the marketing funnel. And I think it's really important, especially with our business model at Seeds, and I think it does parallel so well with the advisor experience and how advisors are marketing their business, that we shift this perspective away from the funnel to the flywheel. And what the flywheel is basically illustrating is you're putting your customers at the middle of your experience. Throughout everything that you're doing on the marketing side, the experience side, your customers are at the heart. So it's basically turning this funnel into a cyclical illustration where awareness feeds into engagement, which feeds into conversion, which feeds into delight. So where the funnel ignores that delight phase, when you think about the flywheel, that is really fueling your momentum to go back to the awareness phase. So you really have to think of it as you gain momentum. The more happy customers and clients you have, the faster the flywheel spins. So you're not constantly needing to fill the funnel with these top of funnel leads who may not be as aware as someone who is referring you. So it's not just referrals, but it is thinking about this experience of marketing journey cyclically versus linearly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great overview. And I think a couple other ways of thinking about it to just kind of solidify the difference between a funnel and flywheel strategy. So this is from how Brian Halligan, who's the co-founder of HubSpot. HubSpot talks a ton about flywheels. So if you're ever looking for more resources, just Google flywheel and HubSpot, and a lot of their blog stuff is going to come up. But in a speech that he did that I watched a while back, he kind of referred to like the funnel thinks of the customers as the output of the funnel. So the funnel is the work that produces the output of a customer, whereas the flywheel sees the customer as like an input in the actual process of continuing to grow with more and more momentum and less and less like basically a scalable growth approach, not just a like, okay, we put X number in, we get Y number out. So that's one way that I think is helpful to think about it. I also think another thing to think about before we get into like specific tactics to really break this down is to kind of think about like, it should, generally speaking, and we can touch on this at the end once we give examples, but you should be thinking about this in terms of how shifting your thinking around this should change how you think about investing your dollars around your growth initiatives. So for example, if you're looking at a funnel approach, you have to invest a lot at the top, right? You have to invest a lot at the top of that funnel to then get enough leads to then filter through and down into this kind of through this pipeline to the end to get the right amount of customers to meet your growth goals. Versus in a flywheel, you can invest in delight and incorporate the outcomes of delighting your customers and your prospects. So delighting across the entire life cycle as you get it moving, you can really invest in those more experience-related investments, and those can make your current customers happier and expand your revenue there while also feeding the flywheel. And we'll get into specifically how you could do that, but those are just two things that I have found helpful when thinking about it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's also taking an integrated approach across your team to thinking about how to fuel that top. So like we mentioned, it's not just about generating referrals by delighting customers. It's about listening to what people are saying to you throughout the entire first phase of that. So the attract, engage, convert, delight. It's about listening to your customers and using those insights to fuel your marketing effort. So it's like, okay, my customers are telling me they have a problem with XYZ. What can I create in the marketing process where it's really clear how we solve that problem and what format will it be delivered in best and best received, and identifying those pieces that reduce the friction that make Flywheel fly and fly fast over time.
Yeah. So just to be clear, like the flywheel, it's not just a wheel. It is specifically named a flywheel because of what you just said, which is that as you gain momentum, like the more force applied and the more friction reduced, the faster it spins. And it should be something where it's kind of like capturing, like in a real flywheel, capturing that energy and storing it and then using it appropriately to continue to spin that growth flywheel, basically. Okay.
Yeah.
How many times can we say flywheel in this conversation? I feel like
we'll have to do a count.
There could be a drinking game or something. Okay. So now we're going to go through like these actual, like the stages of the flywheel. And we can put up on like the YouTube version of this, we'll put up like the actual like image of a flywheel so that everyone gets what we're saying. But do you want to start and talk about attract to begin? Or where do you want to start?
Yeah, we can start at attract. I feel like it parallels best to top of funnel. It really, like, you think about bringing people into your universe, making them aware of your brand and introducing them to your messaging and your story. Attracting is really about exactly that, attracting people to your business and really thinking, how can you best get noticed? What channels do your ideal audience live on? They're already there. That will, how do you put yourself in front of them in that way and get noticed? It's also about growing your audience. So not just putting yourself in front of them and not asking them to do anything, but actually introducing them in a way where it's easy for them to come into your universe so you can market to them in a scalable, more meaningful way. And how do you start conversations with this audience? How do you talk to them?
How do you get attention? And
how do you get attention?
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So it really is, I think, the attract phase is equal to the aware phase that you would see on a funnel. So it's very, very similar concept in that way. The only difference really being that delight funnels into attract. So you're not just filling that phase with, I'll use in quotes for people who are listening, cold leads. It's people who have actually maybe already heard of your business through some other means.
Yeah, definitely. So I think like because we each brought a couple ideas just to throw out there that are examples of this. But one thing to touch on what you just said about delight feeding attract, because we have to start somewhere, even though this is a cyclical process. So we'll tie it all together at the end, but we have to start somewhere. But in delight, like if you know your ideal customer persona and you have some of those people in your current client base and you're looking to kind of kickstart growth, begin there. Don't begin just by guessing, you know what I mean, on where are more people like you. So I think that's a really easy tip in terms of just connecting it before we actually get down to delight, to say like, you shouldn't just randomly select things. The goal with this would be to use what you already know about customers who are already getting value from you to inform where you go and you work to attract more people like them.
Yeah. So I'll share my example of an attract strategy or tactic that advisors can use, and then you can give yours and we'll see how different it is. But my idea for attract is a podcast guesting strategy with, of course, you have to tie it into an offer for maybe something like a free financial consultation or a free financial audit or something that your ideal client would find valuable, highly valuable, because otherwise they won't take the action to come to you unless they really like what you're saying. But basically a podcast guesting strategy, if you don't have a podcast, it doesn't require all the work to get it set up, but maybe you're connected with some people who do have podcasts who you're friendly with in the advisory space, and you're an expert on a niche topic that could be helpful for them to talk about on their show. So positioning yourself as an expert with this thought leadership to come to a podcast really expands your reach to an audience that you may not have been in front of before. So I think that's a really strong attract strategy for advisors to use.
So you mean the advisor go be a guest or bring on guests if they have their own podcast, like guest swapping, basically?
Yeah, if you have your own podcast, absolutely. Guest swapping is a great strategy because it's mutually beneficial to the person that you're
Mm-hmm.
partnering with in that way. But even if you don't have a podcast, I think it's worth getting yourself out there on other shows. And if podcasting isn't necessarily a channel that you're comfortable with, because some people just don't love being on video or having their voice out there, it's finding that channel where it's like the least resistance to you. I think
Mm-hmm.
there's this misconception in marketing that you have to be everywhere all at once.
Yeah.
And that's not true. It's what feels most natural to you, finding that one channel where you can start and keep going. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, introducing a workout routine for the first time. Like, how can you make it as simple as possible so that you go every day? When you're first starting out with marketing, do the same thing. Find that one
Mm-hmm.
channel that you can lean into. And so if it's not a podcast guesting strategy, maybe it's like a blog swap or even just like maybe a newsletter snippet swap where you can just share some thoughts on a topic with your partner's audience. So
Mm-hmm.
there's many different channels where you can leverage that same strategy essentially. So find the channel where you're most comfortable and lean into it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like definitely. And if you are looking at I've seen this a little bit with advisors before where kind of you are getting exposure or you're like cross promoting with another brand, but that other brand is not really aligned with the target audience that you are seeking. So I do
Mm-hmm.
think understanding kind of like back to what we were saying before, understanding what are your customers already consuming outside of like what you give them related to different things going on in their lives. That can be a really great hint of which to reach out to and how to position the value that you could provide to get yourself booked on that. So for example, like say you serve startup founders, that's your ideal customer persona. What are startup founders listening to today? And how could you
Mm-hmm.
go pitch some of the podcasts or newsletters or whatever with something that you could provide specific to you that would serve that audience? Because then they're going to see the value in sharing and bringing you on and sharing what you have to say to provide additional value to their audience as well. So yeah, I love that. So mine is like a lot scrappier. So I'm glad you gave that one because it is definitely a nice balance to mine. So what I have in Attract is actually about engagement, like one-to-one engagement on social media or in community groups. And the reason that I have this is because I do feel like there is a lot of time spent on social media not actually engaging with posts that are not your own post. And I think that I've met a couple of advisors now who are in growth mode whose biggest channel initially was like they found a Facebook group for their ideal customer persona and they started answering questions in that Facebook group. And yes, you are one-to-one answering a question, but hundreds of people in that group are watching you. Like I can't tell you how many times I'm in a mom's group on Facebook, how many times I see someone else post a question that I actually had tossing around in my mind and I'm reading the answers and finding referrals. And so basically, like I'll give a specific example of an advisor I know. They did that and then they started to get referred. So someone would then ask a question in that same group and they would tag her in the post and
Mm-hmm.
like to say like you should talk to this person. And then the other piece that you can do with this that I think is great is then taking those questions and building whatever form of content you like, whether it's YouTube, you have a podcast, you have, a blog, whatever, a quick hit piece on that topic if you're seeing it come up over and over. And then you can actually link to that from within the group. So then you're at least getting them to your website, which is what you were referring to of like, we eventually need to convert this person from an unknown name who is engaging with us in our brand somehow to a known, like owned, like we have their email, we have their name, we
Yeah.
know something about them. So that's the one that I have is just, it's much scrappier on one-to-one, but it does get a lot of eyes if you do it well.
I love that. I think it goes back to a really important point of put the social back in social media. I
Yeah.
think so often when we think about social media marketing, we're thinking about output
Yeah.
from company pages. It's like bringing that personal touch back to social media because that's what people care about. They want to meet people, not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily brands. So when you can put yourself, the person, out there and be helpful in a way like you're answering questions and then taking that back to your universe and creating helpful content. I think it's really powerful for the people that you're answering those questions for, but also your own marketable universe. Because if they're having those questions, it's likely that others do too.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a really powerful idea.
Yeah, for sure. I know that this is hard. My tip I know is hard. And Kelly is laughing probably inside and not saying anything because this is one of the hardest things for me on social media is just getting out there consistently and actually engaging on other people's posts and posting my own stuff. So I know it's hard to be consistent, but I do think if you're in a group that is specific to people who are in your ideal customer persona, you're gonna see consistent trends. Even if you just lurk, do some lurking, a couple months of lurking and seeing what are people asking, what are people saying. I think it can go kind of a long way. I think this strategy was also referenced in our G episode, which was like way back, but our niche down to scale up episode, he did a little bit of something like this as well in a Facebook group. So definitely look at that. Okay, are we done with attract?
I think we're done with attract. We can move on to engage.
We'll allow it. We will move on. Okay, engage. So do you want to intro engage and what this phase is about?
Yeah, so engage is really, the assumption here is that you now have their email address. You can market to them on your owned channels. So just to take a step back, when you think about owned channels, it's not like social, it's not anything that you can't control what happens to the platform. It's you're owning this. So you own your email list. You can market to them how you want, guidelines of like, don't obviously send spam emails because that's not okay. But engage is now you have their email address. You can engage with them in different ways. So thinking of it in that way, my tip is really about an interesting kind of creative way to use email marketing, which it's not just creating a newsletter or sending emails that get known. It's creating an email series. Create an educational email series about a niche topic relevant to your audience. So let's say your target market is serving new doctors in their 30s or early in their career. And they're just trying to figure out how to manage their wealth for the first time. You could create an email course or even a video course that delivers really step-by-step information on what they need to do and know about managing their wealth and working with an advisor. So just a very actionable, quick way to deliver value in a very digestible format.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. It's funny though, because I include in my version of engage is the conversion into capturing the emails. So my tip is a little bit like before your tip, but I do think that this is a great idea because it is aligned with generally like the thesis behind everything I have throughout my entire all of my tips center around this idea of delivering very clear value and solving pain points throughout this entire thing. So whether it is, in a podcast, you're joining a podcast and you're giving tips, or you're engaging on social media, or you are sending out emails, it should be with an understanding of the pain points that the person who is receiving that content has, so that it can truly deliver value and continue to build trust and basically increase the likelihood that they will be easy to close once they go one-on-one. And then once they close, you will actually be able to serve them and delight them in the way that you want. So I think that that's great. Taking like a step back to capturing the lead, because that was a tip I brought and I can't break away from my plan for this episode. So
no, you got to stick with it.
I have to stick with it. So I talked about kind of getting them to your website and getting them aware of your brand. And so say that you get them there. So my tip, and I'm obsessed with lead magnets right now. So I just have to take a moment for a lead magnet tip here. So similar to what you're saying with solving a problem very clearly, I think it's a really powerful thing to be able to completely solve a pain point with one solution, where it's like, give me your email and I will give you this. That could be access to a recording of a webinar. That could be an ebook. It could be a calculator. It could be, it could be a number of things. But I think it's just important to call out whatever that is that you're asking them to give you their email for needs to be something that will quickly alleviate a pain point completely. And ideally, it's something that kind of leads them closer to needing your core offering. So I can think of a number of examples, but I think the biggest tip here is to just know your customer, like know what's going on in their lives before they meet you. And the way you can know that is by talking to them when you are one-on-one with people, of like, how did you find me? What were you worried about? What were you thinking about? What can I help you with? All of those questions can inform really powerful lead magnets once you handle them enough. And that can be that moment of capture. And then from there, yes, that nurturing and being very, very specific and continuing to provide value as you continue to engage with that person throughout this phase, I think is so important.
I agree. And I love that you're talking about a lead magnet, because you could even flip my idea and make it a
In
lead
a lead
magnet.
Exactly.
So it's this idea that the whole thing goes hand in hand, and how you're thinking about it and how you're using these tactics throughout the flywheel journey is all tied together.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely demonstrates how you can kind of use these different tactics in different ways, for sure. Okay, so we have their email. We have been providing value to this person, this individual who kind of is in our ideal customer persona. Let's talk about convert. So this is the moment of going from I know who you are a customer, to okay, we are one-on-one, kind of moving you into being a customer, basically.
Yes, this is the point where they know you, they like you, they are learning to trust you, so they're ready, or maybe nearing the point of readiness to officially become a client or a customer. So you have to think about those experiences. And again, to just parallel it to the funnel, this is the bottom of the funnel. This is like that point of, there's a theoretically smaller group of people, but what are those pain points? What are those friction points that are making them maybe hesitate and trying to solve for them? So my idea for convert is creating try before you buy experiences. So whether it's a free consultation where they get to know you personally, or it's something as simple as, and I'm going to go back to a lead magnet idea here, but at Seeds, we have an assessment tool that advisors use to onboard new clients for the first time and assess new clients or reassess clients if it's been a while and they haven't had an assessment. And it measures things like risk, values, their overall financial situation. Advisors can use that same assessment link as a lead magnet on their website, which, if you think about it from the experience point of view of a potential client, if I'm on your website and I'm checking you out as an advisor, I'm considering whether to work with you, and you're promoting this assessment of like, hey, try out my assessment. This is what I use with all of my clients. These are the questions I ask. Give it a go and see if this is something that you've thought about before and whether we could be a good fit. And I go through that experience. You now have all my information. It makes the onboarding experience less cumbersome, and it reduces that friction in me now coming on board as a client, especially if I liked the experience. So I feel like I can trust you with my money, and I feel more comfortable making the decision.
Yeah, I love that. I think that it is so common to see like all or nothing kind of conversion stages where it's like, well, this is what I offer. And these are like, maybe there's tiering, but there's no kind of entry point that is a lower risk entry point, which is kind of where my tip comes in. Is it's similar, but slightly different. Mine is really around kind of developing and optimizing that core offering that you have, but then potentially offering an entry point offer where it is much more contained. So for example, maybe you offer comprehensive financial planning and investment management. Maybe there is an opportunity for a more simple and time-constrained, lower risk opportunity to convert them into a customer who can then be upgraded into your full service offering. So it could be, I've seen it done like very time specific. So it could be maybe you're working with folks whose kids are about to go away to college. So maybe it is, an offering where you pay a one-time fee for somebody for your company. And this doesn't have to be you as the advisor facilitating this. You could have a junior advisor doing it or what have you, but somebody facilitating just a plan for that transition. So how are we changing our budget? How are we setting our kid up for success with managing their budget while they're at school? So maybe it's like a packaged offering that costs X amount of dollars for this one-time thing. And then the hope is that you can convert them by delighting them in that experience, convert them into your true like core offering. But even if you don't, then they have been a customer once. They have trusted you once. They're much more likely to trust you again if a life event comes up or something comes up where they need to go spend their hard-earned dollars to get financial advice. If you delighted them in that shorter or smaller experience, then you can certainly help them later. I've seen it done. Another example would be divorce. So helping through just the financial transition of divorce could be a packaged offering where then you offer to one of the spouses after divorce, okay, full-time comprehensive planning as you're kind of getting back on your feet and reestablishing yourself. And then maybe, there's additional offers from there. So there's a lot of ways I think you could do this, but just creatively thinking about your core offering and what you could kind of peel out of that you're already doing. That could be a quicker way way to convert them into a paying customer, where you have an opportunity to show them, I will deliver more gain compared to what you're losing by paying me to do this in terms of like effort and money. So making sure that if you do it, that core offering is great, but that entry level offering or that entry point offering is also really awesome, is super important, because you really want to delight them there so that they convert. And even if they don't convert right away, they are more likely to later. And even if they don't later, they're more likely to refer you. Even if you only spent a couple hours with them, they may refer you down the line to someone else going through a similar mission.
I think that's such a great point, especially back to your example about like the kid going off to college. If you think about the opportunity there is around the great wealth transfer and just getting started with that soon and early, I think that's a really important point.
Yeah. And that's kind of, I think, a big thing to point out with a flywheel too, is that I think for a while it can feel, and we've experienced this at Seeds and we're going to continue to experience it, but it can feel like, oh, I'm investing so much in this and I'm like kind of planting all of these seeds, for lack of a better term. And I'm hoping that it's going to pay off by cycling it through and by having kind of these advocates and creating this awareness with people who I've delivered value to, even if they haven't paid me yet. And the bet, if you're doing it right, is that, no, this is going to pay off. And we're going to then see that momentum, and it's going to turn even faster as we continue to apply, force, and invest resources in these same tactics. Do you have anything else on convert or no?
No, I think we can move to delight.
Delight, which is where I
know
live.
you're the most excited to talk about delight.
This is like where I live all day and all I think about. But you've been going first. So why don't you just introduce delight, I guess, to start?
Yeah, I think delight is that phase that you don't necessarily see illustrated on the funnel. It is, think of ongoing customer marketing strategies paired with where, a success or support in our world,
Delivery.
at least.
Yeah.
Delivery, yes, really comes into play and really creates amazing experiences that leave a customer or client feeling really good. When you have happy customers, they're more likely to drive people to you. And you can learn a lot from them. Again, going back to that idea of like taking the learnings and applying them in other ways throughout the flywheel. But Kelsey, I know this is the topic that you're really excited about. So do you want to add anything to that?
I have so much to say. No. So yeah, I think delight is basically anything post sales. So whether it is a one-time offering, you're still doing delight, that you're still doing that cycle within that core offering, that entry offering, or your core offering. So say you took my previous advice and you have two different offerings. But yes, I think like a couple things to point out here within delight is that when you think of the funnel, you really do think of it ending and starting again. And I think one of the biggest things that can be a driver of continued growth and momentum within an organization is if you spend the time to make the experience really good, and we can define what that means, or a very high quality or memorable experience, then it's not just about referrals. It's also about deep insights into the lives and struggles and pain points and issues that your ideal customer persona faces. I want to be clear that I'm not asking people to spend 40 hours one-on-one with customers, but shifting how you think about customers to be optimizing for delight and to be measuring different signs that you may be delighting your customers is a great place to start in terms of just shifting how we think about this. Maybe we're not looking at AUM as our only metric. Maybe we're looking at AUM plus how much wallet share. Maybe we have a % of wallet share goal for each household. Maybe we have a CSAT. Maybe we're doing what Tom Riemann talked about, which is NPS. Maybe we're actually asking our customers, are we meeting your expectations? And if we're not, we're double clicking on that and spending the time to really learn more. So that's like high level overview of delight, but I do have some more specific tactics. Did you want to talk about any of kind of like the marketing tactics that you can kind of use post sales though?
I'll talk about one that I think is maybe a more traditional take on how advisors can activate their customer base in a way that creates value for their whole customer base. And like I said, I think this is more traditional. I'm sure people have kind of heard it before when you're talking about generating referrals, but it's thinking about things like private community events, client mastermind groups that really let clients come together and share their experiences or maybe even their expertise. Maybe they have expertise in an area that other clients could benefit from. And you as the advisor, you're facilitating the space and creating the experience in a way that makes them excited to maybe introduce other people to this group and this community. So that's my more traditional marketing idea for ways you can generate delight. But Kelsey, I know, like I said, I know you are ready to go.
No. So I love this idea. This is part of one of my ideas. But so what I want to say in terms of a tip, because this is definitely something I wrote down, was events, education, opportunities to network. I think these are all really important for certain businesses for sure. But I want to give more of like the reason behind that. And I'm going to keep this tight because, as you know, I could do a whole episode on this. But there are a couple of things to, I think about when we talk about delighting our customers. So say that a customer says yes, and you are going to bring them on as a customer. If we want to optimize for delight, there are two really easy things that I think you can just start thinking about as you assess what that offering, how you deliver all of your services and different resources and things that you provide post close of that new customer. One is value. So the reason that I bring this up is because I think a lot of times, especially in advisory businesses, it's easy to think that value cannot be delivered until we have completely created the perfect plan, right? So we're going to create a comprehensive financial plan. We're going to get all of your investments in order. We're going to have everything organized and figured out and take this off your plate. And that's when you're going to receive value. That can take a long time. So I think something to think about is if you do understand the pain points and you've gotten a better sense of that, what are some like on the way value delivery moments that can feel really good to your ideal customer persona and can confirm that they made the right choice and make them feel like, yes, this is worth it. Whatever I'm doing in this onboarding process, I have now validated that this business that I've chosen to trust with a very like intimate part of my life understands me and knows how to deliver value to me. So that time to first value, I would work to make that as short as possible while making sure that it truly is valuable and not just you throwing like random resources or content at them that isn't going to be perceived as valuable, I guess is the point. The other one is a very easy way that I like to talk about kind of making sure that you are delivering value, which is to minimize feelings of loss and maximize feelings of gain. And this is where events and community and stuff can come in. So I recommend not thinking about your offer as just your core area of expertise. I would think more comprehensively about other ways that you could maximize the feelings of gain that someone is getting based on their relationship with you, and ways that you could minimize that feeling of loss. So I think events and community and relationship opportunities or networking opportunities or mentorship opportunities or partnerships would fall into this category where maybe it's a very trusted partner that you have that you can easily refer for specific life situations. All of that to me kind of falls into this category of like, you are going to gain more by working with me than you will lose. Because to be honest, when onboarding with a financial advisor, it can be painful. There are a lot of feelings of loss that are outside of the money that you pay to a financial advisor. So I have to spend time, I have to fill out paperwork, I have to go dig through a bunch of my like financial data to understand what data you need to run the plan. I then need to give you that data. I need to have a bunch of calls with your team. Sometimes there's back and forth with custodial stuff. Like I have to learn about all these new topics. That's all feelings of loss. That's not value delivery necessarily, unless it is offset by gain. And so I think there are a lot of other ways that you can, on the way to delivering that plan and then beyond, when you're in kind of that steady state, use other tactics to really make sure you're building that up. I could go on. There's a lot of tech stuff too. There's a lot of stuff, but that's at least like a starter, I think. So mine was totally tied to your more classic marketing
I love that
strategy.
Yeah, all of our ideas have been pretty closely tied. You can make the connection and then see how it all plays together on the flywheel. So I love that.
Yeah, for sure. So before we close, I did want to bring up just one other thing that we touched on at the very beginning, which is kind of this idea of applying force to the flywheel. So we just went through kind of the flywheel journey phases, and we talked about specific tactics that may fall into each phase. But what I wanted to just briefly mention is like, once that is kind of working, there can be this idea of applying force to what is working the most. You know what I mean? So if one of these tactics is working more than others, so say that you're getting a lot of like customer feedback about a certain thing that they really like about your offering, a way to apply force and kind of multiply that might be to invest more in that and do more of that with your customers and then talk about it more publicly. So there's different ways that you can think about this, but I would just maybe think about the concept of how do you apply force, which is really like resources to one of the tactics in the flywheel that is working the most, which will make it spin faster. So that's just one thing I wanted to say in closing, but did you have any other closing kind of tips to think about?
No, I think really the only other thing just broadly from marketing is don't be afraid to experiment.
Mm-hmm.
Have every tactic that you try is basically you making a hypothesis and then implementing it is the experiment. So if something doesn't work, of course, give it time. But if something doesn't work, don't feel discouraged that your marketing will never work. Try something else. Try, like you said, try a different point of the flywheel. I think it's just a really powerful mindset shift. The same way we're shifting from funnel to flywheel, it's really helpful when you're starting a marketing program for the first time, I think, to really think of it as an experiment.
Yeah. No, that's such a good tip to end with. I completely agree. It's that test and learn. It doesn't have to be perfect. And you also don't have to map every stage of the flywheel day one. You can literally just start with delight and be like, since that's where I know I should invest, I'm just going to start with my current customers and see what I can get and see what tactics I can kind of bring to life and then feed that in to attract and go from there. So I love that. I'm now supposed to kind of close this out, which I've never done. So check out Seeds. I think Zach always says go to seedsinvestor.com. If you have any questions or feedback, or if you want to engage with us more on this topic, definitely connect with us on LinkedIn or send us an email, hello@seedsinvestor.com. We also have a newsletter that we have started around growth. So Kelly, now that we have Kelly here, we can more consistently put that out. Subscribe to our newsletter. Let me just plug everything just to play it safe. Anything I miss? Oh, Future-proof. If you're going to Future-proof Citywide, Zach and I will be there. Send us an email at hello@seedsinvestor.com. We'd love to have a breakthrough or just connect while we are there. Did I miss anything, Kelly?
No, I think you got it all.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I did it. We did it. We did it without
We
Zach.
did it.
Yay. We did it. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in and we will see you next time.
Bye.